Hello everyone. So for this discussion and screen recording, we will be talking about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and understanding students with it. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is also known as ADHD and is what most people call it. Many students throughout education and even adults suffer with this. Many are not diagnosed with it until maybe their adulthood or never diagnosed with it at all. So 6.1% of children are being treated and have been diagnosed with ADHD. It is believed that there's a much higher percentage of students that are suffering with ADHD but have not been tested, or they are believed to not have it. And just some interesting facts that I found throughout the website while doing research was some states have higher ADHD rates than others, and Kentucky being the highest with an almost 15%, and then Delaware and South Carolina topping out or the end of the top at 7%. And I just thought it was very strange that there'd be such a big difference in certain states, and I wondered if there is something that causes it or if it just happens that way. So as I said, many of the students that have ADHD are not being treated, or even some that have been diagnosed are not treated for their ADHD. Their parents see their treatment as more of a problem, or the doctors don't think it's severe enough to prescribe something. And the states with the lowest rates of treatment with medication are Nevada, with only 2% of those diagnosed are treated with medication, which is a very low percent. I think that is very sad that the students are not being treated and are not getting the help that they need. And then Colorado with a 3.6 that are not being treated. And then factors that increase ADHD risk. This was very shocking to me because with most learning disabilities, it is almost the opposite way, that children from primarily speaking households are 4 times the risk to be diagnosed or have ADHD and suffer from it. And then males are 3 times the risk of females to suffer from ADHD and be treated for it, which I think maybe is there a correlation of students that do, or kids that do not need to be diagnosed with it, because male children tend to be more active and hyper as children, and so I wonder if they are diagnosed wrongly and they're just hyper energetic children. There is an increasing diagnosis, so in 2003, there's an 8% diagnosis rate that it shot up. And then 2007, there's a 10% increase. And 2011, there's another 11% increase. And so overall, from 2003 to 2011, there is a 42% increase in diagnosis. Now that is a huge increase, and so there's a lot of research about why there's such a big increase and what leads to it and what the factors are. So there's an increase in recognition by doctors about the conditions of ADHD. It's becoming more aware to doctors. It's been researched more. They're starting to see the importance of diagnosing it than rather just saying, oh, they'll live with it. There's more awareness among parents and schools. So this might be as a teacher might recognize a student might have ADHD, or sees that they're very active and energetic, or they have a lack of focus and they tend to be unorganized. They might talk to the parents and talk about getting diagnosed or visiting a doctor, or also just parents see it at the home. They see their child being restless, jumping from task to task, and not being able to finish certain tasks without being instructed to. And so just with the more talk about ADHD, many people think that that is one reason why there's an increase of diagnosis. Another big factor is increased access to care. There is more ways to get treatment. There's more treatment out there. There's more, like I said, research out there, so people are able to receive the care that they need, and so more parents are seeing a need to see if their child has it, or if it's just energetic, or what it is. And then also, which this was one interesting thing that I found, was many researchers believe that screen time can be a factor. So they said that when children are at a young age and younger, they are playing on iPads, computers, their parents' phone, and then when they don't have that, they are restless, they can't focus because they don't have that technology in their hands. And so many researchers are linking that to children having those symptoms and those tendencies that an ADHD child has. And so they are thinking that if parents were to limit the screen time, it could also decrease their chances of being diagnosed with ADHD. So behaviors and characteristics of the common child with ADHD, and I didn't know this, but boys and girls tend to have different symptoms, and they aren't always the same, but then there are some that overlap. So boys, impulsive acting out, hyperactivity, lack of focus, which I think is very common in most children, so that's why I wonder if there's there's wrongful diagnosis. Girls being withdrawn, I thought that was very interesting. I never really thought of it like that. Low self-esteem, impairment in attention, tendency to daydream, verbal aggression, which I think is very interesting, that if a girl tends to be more aggressive than girls tend to be, that could be a cause of, or that could be a symptom of ADHD. So then some factors that both boys and girls tend to have are they're unable to finish tasks, inattentiveness, problems playing quietly, unorganized, forgetfulness. And one thing about the unorganized, students tend to not care that they're unorganized if they have ADHD. They don't see a problem with it. That's kind of how their brain works, so they don't see anything wrong with stuff flying everywhere and not being organized. But after looking at these behaviors and characteristics, I thought, well, wow, these are what most young children that at the ages that they're being tested at, 3 to 7, and then 7 to 10 being the primary ages that students are, or children are diagnosed. These are very common characteristics and behaviors, as a lot of kids are like, well, I don't need to be organized, I'm just here to have fun. Or they forget something, they aren't able to focus because they want to go out and play. Or they aren't able to pay attention because it is hard to stay on task as a young child. So effectiveness classroom interventions. So we're just going to talk about this in the different ways that you can help children that suffer from ADHD in your classroom. So if the student is very hyper, it is smart to sit them next to someone that's calmer, or sit them farther away from the more rowdy kids. One thing that was in the book said, if students are working on math and they suffer from ADHD, let them use a calculator, let them use graphs and make their own graphs for certain problems, as that will help them stay on task. It'll give them something to do while they're working on math, and so they have more focus and they're willing to work on that. One thing the book also mentioned was, if you have a student that is reading, give them a few extra minutes to read, and as they might get off task, or they might see something out of the corner of their eye and look at it instead of finishing the reading that they're supposed to be on. Also, one big factor is let them play at recess. Let them get some of that energy out. Let them run around. let them have talking minutes every once in a while throughout the day. So to do this so the child doesn't feel centered on, you could have the whole class, they could have like a 2-minute talking period every hour, or they can get up and stretch throughout the day so they are able to get some of that antsiness and energy out. So another interesting fact that I found while research, that 23% of children diagnosed are not receiving the proper treatment that they need. And so I thought that was very interesting, that if they have been diagnosed, why are they not receiving the treatment that they need, and why isn't something being done? And also, many researchers also think that it is being overdiagnosed and they just want to put a label on everything. And so they diagnose little kids that are just active and energetic rather than just being a kid. They want to put the label of ADHD on. And in IDA 2014, students are put under the category of what is called, other health impairments category. So they are still considered to have an impairment with a learning disability, but it's not seen as much of a disability as some of the other disabilities. And some famous celebrities that suffer from ADHD are Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, Adam Levine, Justin Timberlake, Paris Hilton. There's a lot of athletes that suffer from ADHD, and their sport that they excel at is something that they used as a coping method. I don't know how to pronounce the word. That they used throughout their school to focus. They would be like, oh, well, I can play basketball, or I can go to the gym afterwards, or they would save their energy for the gym. And so then they were able to focus on their sport. So these are the sources that I used. Healthline was very information. It had a lot of information. I thought it really explained a lot of this stuff. And then WebMD had a lot of the symptoms and what researchers were thinking about the whole diagnosis process. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed listening.